Hola, hola, hola. Hello, everyone. Richard Carlton here. It seems awful dark. Hopefully, I'm not quite that dark. Welcome to FMTraining.tv, where we're doing awesome FileMaker training every day, 1 o'clock. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTraining.tv. Today, we'll be having Christian Olson joining us once again for a lot of fun, and so hopefully that will happen shortly. And I do look awful dark. Boy, I tell you, I do look dark. Let me see. Change it to 1. How about that one? Ooh, hey, that's a little better. For us, I want to compliment him on that. So, Christian, what are we looking at here?
I did this the other day. Sometimes what I like to do is work backwards slightly. So the nice thing about this demo is we're going to start very, very easy, and then we're going to go to like an intermediate use of this technique, and then we're going to go into the more advanced use of this technique. But I first want to present, in a lot of these conversations, we're talking about really cool technologies, virtual lists, using SQL, the APIs. And Richard, you and I have talked with this with the juniors before. We hire these new engineers like Maria, who's so bright, and she wants to use all the coolest, newest things. But the reality is those techniques, I rarely go and use. I'll do an API integration, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not touching that. It's like my special tools that I have in the garage. I love them for the jobs that they do. I rarely use my wrench, my sink wrench that bends at a 90-degree angle. But let me tell you, my drill, my hammer, my screwdrivers, I'm using those all the time. And that's the way that I kind of look at this technique. The other thing is whenever we've talked about those, and I've been a viewer, I've seen the audience kind of ask, what's the point? What do we actually use this for? So I wanted to start off with a real use case here. And I've got a copy of Starting Point open here. So I'm just going to present this situation, and then I'm going to go back to my demo file. I have a customer who uses a customized version of Starting Point. He's got all the modules that any of you have used this should see: projects, tasks, contacts, staff. And he had me do a Twilio integration, which is an API that lets you send text messages out of FileMaker. It's really cool. And basically, task records are the different appointments that his people have to go and do installations and whatnot. So when a task is created, certain staff get a text message. When someone shows up at the job site, the task record has a button that is pushed that sends the staff a text message. And then on the server, he has an on-timer script that runs, I'm saying that wrong, that sends these out. And that's all fine and dandy. But where things start to get a bit challenging is we're here in the task table, but I need to get the phone number of the staff, which could change over time, out of the staff record. They want to know who they're going and where they're going, and that comes from the contact record. So if we're just in tasks, getting that information might not be too difficult, but our context tends to change around. For example, most of his users will come into a preference table layout, kind of like the home screen here. And from there, they have basically a portal to tasks to choose the task that they're showing up on. And from there, the Twilio text messages need to go out.
Okay,
So
go back. It chunked, and no one understood that last sentence. So repeat your last sentence.
The last sentence, did you hear that there would be a portal in preferences for them to select a task?
I think so. You were just wrapping that up.
Okay. Yeah, and so basically the difficulty is, I'm going to show this in Managed Database. And this part might be a little hard. Again, we're going to go easy again, but we're over here. I got to zoom this bad boy out. So Richard has a video where he shows like a little Lego guy jumping around, and I like that. We are here. Okay? Well, excuse me, we're not there. We're over here, and I need to get information from tasks. From tasks, I have a related contact, which is over here. And I also need to get information from the staff record, wherever there it is. So I'm here, but I need to get all this information. And what I don't want to do is draw like 4 relationships deep here. I really try to only ever go from a parent to a child. Not to say I never use grandchildren, but it is a personal challenge of mine to never use grandchildren, or to use them as infrequently as much as I can, because they're slower and the predictability of what I'm going to get out of them is less controlled than what I get out of here. And so it can be quite difficult when I'm over here up here in preferences, to try to gather that information. Now, is that mostly clear there, Richard?
Yeah, it's hard to see that because it's really kind of fuzzy because it doesn't render out real tightly. But we're jumping from one table occurrence group to another table occurrence group is kind of the conversation here.
Yeah, it's exactly. And so normally you have a contact, an invoice, and you need to get contact information out of it. You could have a lookup, or you could look through that relationship. But when you start needing to look at that table that's related to a table that's related to another table to get information, getting all of that info can be challenging. But it doesn't have to be. And I bet you most people in here actually have the skills to. We did start without you, Andre. We've been talking about you. Most of you do have actually the skills to solve this. You just don't realize what that technique is. And so now I'm going to jump back over to this demo file that I have. Let me just move starting point over. Whoops. Over here. Okay. So right here, I've got a real basic file. I could have done this with starting point, but I thought it would be nice to demonstrate this with the least amount of stuff so that we can really make this crystal clear. So I want to make a point. As I show this demo, some of you are very savvy. You're going to go, oh, Christian, this could have been solved a different way. I know that. It's not about the actual problem I'm going to present to in here. It's more about the technique itself. So what we're looking at right now is the people or contacts section of this database. I've got Richard, I've got Nick Hunter, I've got Art, I've got myself, we got Tim Cook, we got all these people in here. And if I select someone like Nick Hunter, Nick has some notes. And in these notes, we've got a type, and we've got the note itself. So if any of you have used starting point, you've probably seen this, where I can select Richard, or excuse me, I can be on Richard's record, and I can say, hey, create a note, and this is going to be a meeting to show off the stream. Stream presentation practice. Okay. So on the left here is basically a portal of all of the notes for this contact. Pretty straightforward. ID contact to ID contact. And when I click on one of those notes, what's happening on the right-hand side is I'm selecting that record out of the portal, and I'm able to display it. Again, if you've used starting point, we do the exact same thing in there. And this, for most people, is not that confusing. Now, if you've never seen this before, let me show you what's going on. And a point that I want to get across here that I'll come back to, I tend to think of portals as nothing more than a list of IDs. Those lists of IDs allow me to display information from those related tables, but that's all I have. So though this says call and email and meeting, it is an ID number. It is this ID. I should have done something like ID note so it's easier to see. As I click into this field, a very simple script fires. It says, hey, take the ID out of this portal and put it into this ID. And if we go into Manage Database, you can see this down here. So I've got notes for that contact ID note. And and this is the portal. And when I click in the portal, I'm selecting that individual contact's ID. And then that allows me to put it into this ID selected note or current note. And I can see just one record. So that's what's going on here on the right-hand side. Portal, select the record, display it. I think I've beaten that one as dead as I can. That's the easiest use of this. And what's nice is it's visual, so I think most people can follow along with what's there. But this technique is a lot more powerful than just displaying a simple record. And let's take it back for a moment here. And Richard, if you need to jump in at all while I'm doing this.
Nope, you're good so far, although Andre did show up. But we'll get, as soon as
I saw that.
Yeah, but we'll get through this. His won't take that long. We'll just go ahead and do yours first.
Yeah, and Andre, since you can hear us now, cool little demo file. We ran through it. We thought we would wait to run through it until you got here. Okay, so now I'm in a different section of the database. Now I'm in the company section of the database. And on the left-hand side, I have the master detail that Claris FileMaker made really easy for us to access, I think in version 17. And this is basically the same principle. They just do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. I've got a record, RCC. If I click on it, I see RCC's info. I've got the company name, and I have what I call a unique data field. So RCC data unique. I click on Apple, I get iMac. I click on Claris, I get FileMaker 19, and I can see that information. Inside of this module, I can also see the people that work for that company. So there's RCC, and we've got Richard and Nick and Art. Over here in Apple, we got Tim Cook, myself, and Calvin, and I got some people at Claris, okay? And similar to the notes section, if I click on a person, I can now see their notes off to the right-hand side, okay? Now, you could solve this by having the company table and the contacts table with a grandchild to their notes. It wouldn't be the fastest thing in the world, but it would probably work just fine. But then I want to go a step further. I want to see Richard's note about meeting right here. Now, if I used just child-parent relationships, this would end up being a great-grandchild. The performance would be poor, be more difficult to manage. And I generally, if any of you get to the point where you make a great-grandchild, stop. You have made a mistake in what you're designing if you get to that point. You should never have a great-grandchild. I would avoid grandchildren, but you should never, ever, ever have a great-grandchild. There's a different way to solve the problem that you're dealing with. And this is a great example of it. So what's going on here? Well, if you paid attention to the last section, you're probably already kind of aware what's going on. So I've got a couple fields on screen here that I'm going to display here. Okay. So again, FileMaker makes it really easy for us to select the company. But when I select Richard here, this ID changes. That's Richard's ID. That's Nick's ID. That's Art's ID. Once I choose their ID, I've got a list of notes here. And we can go to Manage Database and we can see that. So here's a list of all the people that work for the company. That's that one portal. When I select a person out of here, then I can see all the notes for that selected contact. That's the second portal with all the notes. When I click into one of these, then I'm able to see the selected note. The only difference that's going on here, the first one is the ID that most people are probably familiar with, ID company, ID company. The second one is what we saw in the notes, where we have selected contact to ID contact. And then similarly, just like we had in contacts, I've got their selected note. So I'm able to see that. And that's what allows me then from this view to get this kind of cascading information. For another client, I did this to build value lists. The cool thing that happens here is as you build records through this, if you have on record creation, it automatically passes the IDs for you. So sometimes I'll have this be like the main value list, and then these are values inside of it, and then maybe we have sub values to it. So really useful as a visual way of displaying information. But again, it gets far more powerful than this. So let me go back into layout mode here. Okay. And Richard, I have taken my eye off of the chat. So if anyone has a question as I go, by all means.
I've learned that when they're quiet, either they're intoxicated or wandered off, or they're actually watching and learning. So it's been pretty good.
Good. So I just want to make sure, because I think that most of this is easy, but I don't want to lose anyone. I actually used practice this morning with some of my coaches who, again, I think like many of you probably know very well how to select a note for a contact. They probably could even get to this part where I'm selecting a person and then I'm seeing their notes. And even when you get to this part, it's all visually, it's happening on screen. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But you don't need portals. All of this is happening whether there are portals or not. And this is where I think this can get really, really powerful. So now I'm going to go to the next section of kind of this demonstration. So all I've showed you so far is how do you select records to basically display them on screen. So now I've got a section over here called project/tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make well, I've got a project for Nick. Well, let's see. I think Art had a good one. I thought you'd like this one, Richard. So Art has a project called Finance where he needs to remind engineers to log their time. So basically, I thought you'd appreciate that. So I've selected Art from RCC. I've created this project called Finance. I can actually type them right into here, live project. Okay, and then from there, I can add. I should have put some placeholder tests so you know that this is a task. Okay, and I'll show you that in Manage Database here real quick. So again, we've been talking about this section of the database so far. Now we're going to go down and we're going to talk about this section of the database. Okay, so I'm up here in company. And I've got my, let me just move this out of the way. I've got my selected contact, and here's my projects. And I've got that on record creation, so I can create a project. And I want to actually, while I'm back here, show something really quickly, because this is important to know for the next step. Projects are only related to people, and they have a name. That's it. And again, I could do some things to make some of this a little bit easier to solve. Tasks, which you're going to see, are only related to projects. Tasks are not related to a person, and they're not related to a company, just the project that makes them, and they have a name. So if I get into the tasks table, I'm not going to be able to see the person that made it, the company that made it. It's distanced through the project relation, or TO. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here. So here we go. So Art's got his finance project, remind engineers to log time. And now I'm going to click this button. And now we're in the tasks table. So again, remember, tasks don't know who created them. They just know that they are related to a project. And now I have a situation. And again, we're gonna squint our eyes a little bit this way that I like to look at it. The problem that we're solving isn't the actual problem. It's rather the technique. If I'm somewhere and I need to get data. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me go ahead and interrupt. So Carlo on the YouTube side saying you probably, and I'm not sure if he's talking about your specific thing because I'm doing multiple things here. Actually saying a couple things here. He said you could probably use the list function and aggregate the UUIDs of the related TO. So not to add too many extra fields on the first table used for master detail. I mean, it's a different, I mean, it's whether that's relevant in this situation or not. I'm actually watching air traffic control, and I'm doing tech support for Bunny right now. So,
Carlo, take that thought and just hold on to it for a moment. In this context, no, I don't need a list of IDs. The relationship does it for me. So when I have company and I have contacts, my list of IDs, so I'm not disagreeing with you on this, it's created by virtue of this relationship. But you're a little bit ahead of where we're going to go with this. So yes, having those list of IDs is highly powerful. So I'm going to jump back over here. So again, we're in tasks. We only know the project that this came from. But now I have a situation where this record needs to get data from the company record that initially created it. So again, we're over here. This record owns this one, and this record is owned by this person, and this person is owned by this company. I like the ownership here. But projects is not related to the company. It is only related to art. And the task is only related to finance. So again, I could pass some other IDs, but that's not the point of this demo. Now I'm going to push this button. And I'm going to tell you guys what this says, and then we're going to walk through the script. So using the IDs, we can select the name of the person related to the project that is related to the task. I know it's a mouthful.
Okay.
And we know that that's now Art Savea. Go ahead.
And there's a question. So this is from David. He says, so you create a UUID note at contacts table. And this is probably about from a minute ago. Remember, there's a delay here. So you create a contact at the contacts table and set the same UUID to the notes table as created for the same project. Question mark.
Second. I see it. So you create a UUID note at the contacts table and at the same UUID to the notes table as created as the same project. I think that he's right. So if I go to the back end, let me know if this helps. Each table has very, very limited info. So let's start with company. Company has an ID. Here's our selector keys, which we can just ignore for a moment. And then a company has a name and then unique data. A contact has, and when I say ID, these are UUIDs. Some people in here might be hearing us say UUID and not know what that means. UUID just means unique identification number. So like the way that we normally do this at RCC, and actually I do like it quite a bit. I just use this stuff that's in here is we'll do something like this, con 001. That's no different than a UUID. They're the same thing. So each record has a UUID, and I think that you're correct what you're saying, David, is that when I click on one of those, I'm selecting it. When I make a new record through the relationship, if you guys aren't familiar with this, if you have this checkbox set here, where's one that I've got it? I have allow records, allow creation of records in this table. So when this TO creates a record in here, this ID gets transplanted into this one because a new one's being created. In this context, it's a little unique because a company is creating a project, but the ID is the contact's ID, not the project. David, let me know if that answers your question or not, because I'm not 100% sure that I did.
And just remind, there's about a minute, 90-second delay between when he's going to see this and then when we get the text back. So I'll just remember where you're at with this with David, because he'll probably
absolutely, because I think that he's right, but I don't want to say that's wrong. So again, I push this button. We're going to see what this does. But the task now knows that Art created it, and this can also be used to get company data related to the contact. The company's name is RCC, and the unique data field is RCC data unique. So again, this table doesn't have a relationship to this or to this. So what are we doing? Let's take a look at it. Okay, so we're going to start up here. How can I make this?
Hey, can you? Listen. People are going to lose their minds here before this. Can you close this file and give me a copy of it right now? Because I'm going to have 50 people or 60 people here in a second demand the free file, and I'm totally good with that.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah,
I can load it right now, so by the end of the broadcast they can have the link. So
Dave asked for a copy of this file, so I'm totally happy to share that.
All right, Dave, you were just answering a question for Dave. He says you answered his question, which is great.
Oh, good. And actually, different Dave asked me for it this morning than that Dave. Okay, so let's return here.
Hang on, make sure I got it.
Yep.
Where'd you put it?
Slack.
Got
Selector.
it. It didn't highlight it. Okay, that's great. I'm gonna load this for everyone on our and give them a download link here in about 5 minutes.
Yeah. And again, everyone that's going to get this isn't like one of those flashy demos that you get from something else. The heart here is to understand this technique so that you can then apply it. Again, with a lot of our new engineers like Maria, they want to do the data API thing. They want to do APIs. They want to do SQL. They want to do. They're so bright, but I sit and tell them, you just need to get really good at things called like list processing, using the relationships, because that at the end of the day is the number one skill I think you use. The stuff I'm about to show you in these scripts, I hands down write virtually every single day that I work. This is something that I use every day. While the Twilio API integration, as cool as it is, I've done it, I think 3 times, but maybe only 2. Very cool.
Can I ask a question? So this is a multi-record selector. Nick had one of these too, but this is yours a little different. Multi-record selector. Is that what this is? How would I describe this? I have to put a description for this in our system. So what am I calling your demo here?
Record selection.
Okay, it's called Selector Demo. So we'll call record selection. Record selection with Christian. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And you said that Nick, I'm sure that almost every single experienced developer at RCC does this in different ways. I'm sure that Nick does. I did not invent this. This is just knowing how to use FileMaker. But what I have found, at least for myself in the evolution of getting good with it, is I understood how to display the notes. I didn't understand how I could then take that into a scripted world and not have to display the portals whatsoever, but get a lot of information. And so let's look at the script. Real quick, you'll notice with all my scripts too, they all look identical. Just really brief on this. I recommend either you have a program like Clip Manager that I use, or just a template script somewhere. So anytime you make a script, you can throw this in. It's really nice to have some information at the top of your script. And frankly, I'm writing scripts all day long. Writing this, and I'm very particular about my lines being matched up. Doing that all day long is just a waste of my time. So I have a program. I jump these in. I always try to say what the purpose of my script is, whether it has parameters. I don't necessarily use every section. For example, on this script, this configuration and validation section is unused, but that's just a little tidbit I threw out there. Okay, so let's go back and look at here what happened real quick. So again, I've got a task record, and I wanted to go gather some company data. Okay, so I'm over here. Where'd you go, Art? Oops. I'm over here in this Remind Engineers, and I need to get Art's name. So how did I get Art's name? Well, I looked through a relationship to grab his ID. And that relationship, I'm in tasks. Tasks are related to a project by ID project. Inside of this TO, again, just ID project, is ID contact. So I can look to the project to grab the contact's ID. That's not Art's name, but it is his ID. Then I can set that ID to a key field, a GID selected contact, and then I can look through the newly established relationship to get Art's name. So again, we're here, we're looking through this relationship. There is no portal, but it doesn't matter. And there's only one record in here, so it's really easy. I grab Art's ID, I put it into this field, and now I can look through the relationship to contacts, and I can grab contact data. In this case, what I'm interested in is the person's name, and I'm just going to store it in a variable. That's great. Now I've got Art's name, but I need more than just Art's name. So come back over here. Now, using Art's record, I'm going to grab his company ID. Let's go back to Manage Database, look at this real quick here. And I'm really trying to go slow, because though I don't think that this is necessarily the hardest thing, it can take a little while to kind of grasp. I sometimes relate, I'm a car guy, I sometimes relate relationships to learning how to drive a stick shift. Both my cars are manuals, and for years, or not years, when I learned how to drive them, people told me how a manual worked. It made sense, but it didn't mean that I could do it. And so I think that looking at these things can make sense, but then you go to do it and it's a little bit more difficult till it kind of just clicks. So I'm looking through Art's relationship, and I'm going to grab the company ID. I'm going to stick it into GID selected company, and now I can grab information out of the, yes, Daniel, you're right. I can now grab information out of the company record, okay? So what I want out of the company record is that I want to get the company's name, and I want to get the data that's in it. So I'm going to use the list function here to make a list of company name and company data. Then I'm going to clear my keys out. You don't have to do this. I like to do it. And I'm going to put those keys into a variable. And for anyone that gets the demo file, I threw something in here based on yesterday. This is not the way to do this, but yesterday I showed you guys briefly how you can display things on screen using a local variable. And so I added it to this demo file just in case y'all want to look at it. I wouldn't do something using this method, but we had briefly gone over that yesterday, so I packed it into this demo so people could see that. So again, I run through the script. I'm able to get I'm able to select the contact, grab his name, select the company that he's related to, grab that company information, and then display it. We're going to run out of time, but let's see how far I can get. So now I want to get more than that. I want to get the person, and I want to get all of their notes. So I'm going to run through this one real quickly because I want to try to get to the last script where it gets really powerful, okay? So just like similar to the one before, I need to select the contact. In this case, I'm going to use a parameter. So up here at the top, I've indicated that my parameter is going to be a contact ID, and that there could be one or there could be many, okay? So if we go to this button, there's a parameter on it. I'm looking through the relationship to projects to grab that ID contact. Again, just another kind of technique for you all to think about as you build things. I try to make my scripts like functions. They have inputs and they have outputs. Those inputs are referred to as parameters, and I tend to refer to my outputs as the result, okay? So we take that ID, we select the ID, and now using the contact's ID, where is it at? I can grab all of that one person's notes, selected contact to ID contact in the notes table. That lets me, using the list function, get all of that person's notes. Now, this is really important, and I forget his name with the C, Carlo had said, oh, you're using the list function. If you look through a relationship, this is really an important concept to understand in FileMaker. If I look through this relationship to notes and I say, give me the note, FileMaker's default behavior is to always give me the first record. This is a huge clue whenever you're working if something doesn't work. Am I just getting the first record? But all the records are there. They're all there. It's just if I say give me one, it's only going to give me the first one. And that's where the list function is powerful. Do you want to jump in there, Richard?
Yeah, so Daniel's pointing out a good point. Is this basically like the selector connector?
So yeah, I wasn't going to really bring that topic up because I really think that people should stick with Anchor Buoy. It is the easiest to follow and understand. I do use some other more advanced back end setups, and absolutely, this is how Selector Connector works. However, you don't have to understand what Selector Connector is. You don't have to use it to utilize this technique. As you can see in my back end, this is a 100% Anchor Buoy setup. I don't know that you really want me to have a conversation on what Selector Connector is.
I've had quite a few.
It is the technique.
I've had quite a few conversations because the performance with Anchor Buoy is almost twice as fast. So Selector Connector. The bottom line with all this, I think everyone has to understand. It's kind of important with this. Let me go ahead and I'm about to do a bunch of hand waving here, so let me go ahead and adjust this a little bit. So it's important to understand is that as you're building a relational diagram, unless you are decidedly a senior ninja person, which is this person hiding behind me over here, unless you're this person over here, and you're very good at being a very senior ninja. I mean, I'm not saying that you've used FileMaker for 20 years. I got people who don't write scripts, who can't write scripts, who've been using FileMaker for 20 years. That's not my definition of a senior engineer. A senior engineer is someone who can kick Christian's ass on any given day, just about, right? Christian can hold his own, but if I put Christian in a cage match with Nick Hunter, Christian doesn't make it. And so Christian is almost a full senior engineer, not quite, give him another year or two. The point is that right now we're at this area where he's starting to play with this a little bit, but unless you're at that level, you need to keep life simple and predictable and understandable, and you need to use the Anchor Buoy methodology. If you use the idea with Selector Connector, and I'm going to go back kind of to Christian's screen here. We can still see your screen, Christian. Is that all these things are separated here, right? And so when you load up on a layout, say you go to a layout and it's tied into this, you're only going to really, FileMaker is going to download and get the data that just drive this. If you have a spider connection where this is connected to this, and you've seen it where there's a path to everything is connected to everything, and it's a giant mess. And A, it's hard to understand, and B, in order for FileMaker to service that layout, it has to understand its place in the world relative to everything. It has to download everything into memory at one time, and it has to process that simultaneously at one time. Selector Connector kind of has some of those kind of problems. And so what happens is it solves some interesting issues, but the performance goes down. If you have a real big scalable application, it's not great for that. And that's not me saying that. That was the speed test, speed test crazy guys at 24U Hansa, right? Hansa 24U, Czechoslovakian guy, really smart, runs his own FileMaker consultancy. I'll move myself back over here. Anyway, so the deal with him is that, he does all this performance testing, and we went through this, I don't know, a month and a half ago, where we looked at the stopwatch data from him, and he had three identical, a solution to start off as a spider diagram, and he did stopwatch testing on it very precisely, because he has a tool that he sells that allows you to hook it into scripts and then speed test things, right? He speed tested the spider diagram, then he converted it to Anchor Buoy to clean it up, and then it was like double the speed. And then when he went back to Selector Connector, because everything's still kind of cross-connected but kind of jury-rigged a little bit, the performance went back down again. So I don't like it because it's a training issue. It's like the same reason I don't like FileMaker or Claris when they change the name of their products, because I'm dealing with people who don't understand that Pro Advanced is now just Pro. It's an unnecessary conversation to have. So I don't want to have to explain to people about Selector Connector if you're at any of these other levels. So if you're any of these other people here, right over here on these sides, and you're not hanging out over here, when you hear Selector Connector, just keep on going. Now, Christian, your demo, it works without that kind of thing, right? I mean, the important is to understand the underlying lesson.
Yeah,
here, right?
I'm gonna show a quick picture, and if I know that not everyone's in YouTube, so I'm gonna. The difference between what I'm doing and Selector Connector is that Selector Connector has a single relationship to grab these records. But, this is a big but, most of my customers, especially with coaching, they struggle in two areas. The first one is scripting. Though they can write scripts, their skill set in it is, it's at the shallow end of the pool. But where most of my customers struggle is in the relationships. So if you struggle in the relationships, making it more difficult isn't a good idea. Anchor buoy is the easiest, most understandable way to design things, and you can still use the selector connector ideologies. Let me show you what a selector connector backend looks like. We're not going to focus today's session on it. So this is one of my own personal databases, and this is probably going to scare a lot of people in here. And I want to focus on what I got to make this window so freaking small. Sorry, 1 second. I've got a 30-inch monitor, but having the 800 resolution is really quite a challenge. Okay, let's zoom out on this. Okay, so ignore basically everything you see here for a moment. Okay, and let's focus right here. Okay, so from this blue over to the red is an anchor buoy model. It's easy to follow. It's what I recommend that you do. This over here is what the selector connector model is. Basically, all of these tables are connected to a TO way up there that connects to this. And that's where Richard's saying you can have a performance degradation, because technically when the file loads, all records are accessible. And at any given point, all records are accessible. And so FileMaker has to load that data, and that can be a performance hit that has been measured. But where I have multiple relationships to grab the selected note, you have one selection of them over here. That's what it looks like, and it does plug into an anchor buoy model. So it's not like you use selector connector over anchor buoy. To me, they go hand in hand. This is my file. My coaching customers, I don't recommend that they use these. And the same reason, like I said, you have to learn how to drive a stick shift. If you're just learning how to drive, maybe learning on a stick shift isn't the ideal situation. So, Richard, I always go back to what you said in one of the videos. If you can make it, I'm going to say this kind of long, but if you can make an intelligent argument as to what backend you use, then go ahead and do whatever you want to. But for those of you who can't maybe make an articulate argument as to why you're going to use one model over another, use anchor buoy. Just hands down, use anchor buoy. And that's the reason, like almost all of everything we have at RCC uses it. It's easier to follow and understand what's going on. When I get customers and they have a really poorly designed backend, I will tell them I'm already at a disadvantage to help them, because it's the hardest part of the database to understand. So I was going to avoid it. I figured someone would eventually ask it. Yes, this technique is absolutely embedded in the idea of selector connector, but it doesn't matter. The idea is that in databasing, you can select records and you can get a list of records. And if you understand that that's the underlying way they work, you can do some really powerful stuff. So want me to jump back into the script, or is that a good kind of overview of that?
Yeah, it's just important for everyone to kind of understand, So I mean, I caution the training, because I have to. I mean, I don't mind having. I caution people because I have actually literally had people come to me, and I'm not picking on any senior developers, but I'm just going to say this. I said, I've had 2 or 3 people come to me and goes, Todd Geiss is brilliant. I go, yes, he is. He uses a selector connector. I don't know what that is, but I want to use it too. Literally, that has happened 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, right? So that's like saying that, that we really like the, pick your favorite government of the world, and they have nuclear weapons, so I want one too. Never mind, I don't know what it's for, and pretty much I don't want to play with it because it could blow up in my face, right? It's like I said, the deep end of the pool. When you're there, like Andre can totally do this. This guy is brilliant. Some of you guys in here, and I'm not picking on people I know or don't know. TK55678 probably could use it. He's very senior in some things and a couple things. So everyone's got these little columns. You have not, the world of FileMaker is very broad in terms of all the things. And then there's these little slices where everyone learns stuff. And as a senior engineer, you start to fill in all the slices, right? But then you'll have gaps where you don't know stuff, and the trick is to learn those gaps. But the point is, if you can articulate, like song and verse about why you would want to use selector connector, or why you want spider, or why you want something else, then you're good. I don't even want to have a conversation, because I have people, they read my book and they're like, oh, well, Richard doesn't like what was it, split data UI
data separation
model, and it's like, and then I'll have people who start arguing with me in the book, and I say, if you're smart enough and you know enough about data separation, really, 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 to articulate it with me, then do whatever you want, right? But a lot of my training is built for the bottom 90%, not the top 10%, if that makes sense. So, because I want to keep the 90% out of trouble. Yeah, that's my goal in life. Make your experience as positive as possible. Why don't
Yeah.
you go ahead and finish
And,
up this conversation?
and just the last thing to note on what Richard said there, as far as the Selector connector, people at RCC came to me, they showed it to me. I've watched the Todd Geiss videos, and I said, oh, this is cool. It took me a long time to understand how to use that. I really don't recommend that most people jump into that. I really, really don't. But this has nothing to do with that, even though, yes, that is where I kind of learned the technique. So I showed you guys that we can go and gather the company or the person related to a task via the project and also their company and that data. I showed you that we can grab that person and their notes. I've got two more things. One I'm going to go through briefly, and then another one that I think is really, really useful to understand. So now what I want to do is I don't want to just gather Art, the information from Art, who owns this task. I want to use Art to figure out all the people that work for the company and get their information and get all of their notes. So I'm going to go ahead and click this button right here. And it's using the same script as before, which I'll walk you through. But we got a problem here, okay? Up here at the top, it says contact, Richard, Nick, Art, and then the notes are all, they're all just mixed together. I don't know whose is whose. So I'm going to go through this one really brief because obviously it's not too functional. But I want to gather all the contact notes here, okay? So I grab the contact from the project, and then I select that contact. Then using that contact, I figure out the company. I select the company. You guys are probably familiar with this by now. Using the company, I can get this is where things change a little bit. I can get a list of the company IDs. And this is probably something you haven't seen before. Over here in all these layouts, Richard, I got a new bug to point out to you in 19 after this.
I don't want to hear about it. I'm still doing tech support. I got Media Sandbox over here telling me we should do flat file. So
I can't get the my installer will not stop opening. Okay, so when I select a record, an individual ID is put into here. But watch this. I don't know why that's a drop down. I'm gonna make that an edit box. I want to show this to you real quickly before I go show the script and then the last part, because this kind of blew my mind when I learned that you could do this. So right now, call, that is its ID, spoke to Claris about the day stream. Now I'm going to go to email, which is plan API meeting with Art. It's not going to show it here. It's not a portal. But I'll explain this in a moment. If I put two IDs into here, I can select two records at the same time. Kind of. It's how a portal more or less kind of works. Let's go back to company, and let's see if I have the task open. Okay. So I've used a company ID to look through a relationship, selected contact. That is this one right here. So I've got company. Nope, not that one. Contact. There we go, this one. Move that out of the way. Okay, so I'm looking through a relationship at contacts using ID company. On this side over here, there's more than one ID. And again, if I say give me the ID, it will give me the first person. But if I say list, it's going to give me all of their IDs. And so in this script right here, I can actually select all three people, call the script before that I showed you all, and select now all three people instead of just one of them and gather their information. However, as I showed you, the result that we get from this really isn't ideal. It'd be much better if I could see Richard and see his notes and see Art and see his notes and Nick's and so on and so forth, which we can absolutely do. And I wanted to use this one to show off this last technique before I can end this. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and show you the output here real quick. So we got contact number 1, Richard. We've got his notes. Contact number 2, Nick Hunter. I got his notes. Contact number 3, so on and so forth. So how did I do that? Okay, let's go look at the script. Okay, same techniques that we've gone over with a slight difference in here. Okay, over here, we're going to select the contact out of projects like we did before. The contact out of projects allows us to get the company. We can select the company. By selecting the company, just like I did in the other script, I can get a list. And I think this goes to what some of the people are saying in the comments in the different streams. Now I have a list of all the IDs, okay? And I can loop through that list. This is the part I think where most people will get lost. So I want to show you visually what that looks like just real quick. I actually had a layout for this. Okay. So I'm going to take this project right here. I'm going to put it in there. That allows me to get art. You can see all of Art's notes. I'm going to take Art's ID. I'm going to put it over here. Okay. And so I have all of these people's IDs right now in a variable, not their names, their IDs. Okay. But this is visually what's happening, but no layout has to happen. You can do it all in your head. Okay. So I take that list and then I say, how many IDs are in the list? And I use that with value count. So we count them. I always call this $S. To me, that means stop. The next thing is maybe there's nobody in it. So if nothing is greater or equal to 0, then we terminate the loop. Otherwise, as many of you, I'm sure, are familiar in one way or another, I create a counter. I call mine C. And so each iteration through this loop, C counts up. First loop is 1, second loop is 2, third loop is 3, so on and so forth. We terminate the loop when we hit the maximum number of IDs. Now what I do is I select, using get value, the first, second, third, whatever it might be, ID out of my list, put it into my selection key right here, and I can grab data. I can grab the person's name. In fact, I can count which person they are. I can put the notes, and then I can put the list of notes. I take that selection, that list of data, and I make a greater list, which just sits and rotates through the loops, which gives us the output at the end that allows us to display it. This little loop right here, this idea of grabbing a list of values or IDs and looping through them to build things, I use probably every single week, multiple times. So that I really wanted to show off. And again, this isn't like magic. This isn't the cool APIs or whatnot. But if you can master a couple of these little techniques, it allows you to solve those problems. So real quick, to go back to my original customer, my guy is in preferences. He needs staff information. He needs contacts information, but it comes from the task. So what we do is we select the task that he's interested in. The task gives us the contact ID, the staff ID. We select the staff, we select the contact, we grab the data, we build everything together, whether it's string or logic-based things, and we're able to accomplish something without going all over the database and doing finds or creating giant long strings of relationships. So unless there's some other questions, I think that wraps up what I have there. I don't know if you wanted to chime in at all on that, Richard.
Nah, it's important. What I would tell everyone at this point is that with this file, I would definitely rate the level of difficulty and where Christian's at is solidly in the intermediate here. So Bunny is going, I'm sure, holy crap. It's in this area here solidly, maybe in between here a little bit when you're spinning and doing lists. Definitely not brand new developer world. Now, I do want to address, I'm going to pivot here because I think we've given you a sample file. You've seen this. Christian, your screen does get a little pixelated. Some of the people suggested that you reverse it back to white instead of doing the dark mode on it. That might make it more visible or easily to see, because like right now it's pretty sharp, but as you're flipping through code and jumping through code, is trying to draw that here, and it's really...
Yeah, like, for the future streams, I could switch out of it.
Yeah, try switching that.
Like the dark mode, yeah. But yeah, for the streams, I'd be happy.
And then the other part of this I want to point out real quick is that Media Depot had a really, really good point. I think it was Media Sandbox had a really good point. And I understand the point, and I've actually done things differently in my life because of the way FileMaker, if you just are searching on one table, is really fantastic. The problem is building out a great database, you need to have things, the term is normalized, but it's where you break everything into its own little boxes, its own little table. But then searching is hard, but there is a demo, and Christian, you guys were playing with this again the other day. Remember the multi-table, high-speed searchy thing? I think it was a demo by...
That's not one table. That's really complicated. If it's the thing that I shared...
That's the one by MSN Media. It's Matt Navarre's demo.
That's not a single. That's a virtual list.
It's but it does.
It combines multiple tables together. They look like they're in one table. They're not.
Yeah, I
Let's
know,
say, for the
but that's okay. But the point is that if you have multiple tables and you want to do a search and have it search across all 3 or 4 of them simultaneously, how are you going to do that?
very difficult.
Right, and that was Media Sandbox's point. He said, "Well, just put them all on one table, and then they all search great." Except that creates all sorts of reporting problems, security. It's really impossible to create security in a file the way you want it to work, where you have some people. Yeah, so
I can comment on that a little bit too. So when I started, something that I've done for a number of customers that I really won't do very often anymore. Sometimes I will. Starting point. One of the most common things I build for people is a purchase order module. Purchase order module means that basically instead of accounts, you have vendors. Instead of invoices, you have the opposite of an invoice. An easy way to jumpstart this is to basically put a field in accounts called type and indicate whether or not that account is like a company, a customer, or it's a vendor. In 100% of the cases where we did that, at some point in the future, we ditched it. It created too many problems of trying to keep track of the data because, like you said, you go in, they're mixed together, and you think, oh, I just make a type and I just indicate that this one thing is this one thing, and in the long run, it ends up becoming a nightmare.
Quotes and invoices, I mentioned if they're really, really identical, you can get away with that. But even notice the starting point, estimates are not the same, or quote is an estimate, are not the same as invoices. We broke it out as its own separate thing because it gets into issues, especially if you start to have a team that's more than 3 or 4 or 5 people. You want certain people to, you have bigger teams. You don't want, like for example, if a salesperson creates an estimate and then they push it to an invoice and it gets paid, then the money comes in. The sales guy isn't running around, or sales gal, whoever, I'm not being sexist. They're running around, salesperson is running around with money, and most businesses don't. Like at FileMaker, they don't have the salespeople running around with stacks of $100 bills because they don't want they have the finance people for that. So there's different security for different jobs, and they interact differently with the system. If it's all on one table, it makes that really difficult to do. So a flat table, there is some thoughts about that. Looks like the beavers are banging on the ceiling above me. But yeah, the running thought on that is that you really need to normalize everything out. If you want to do a search and have it do a cross solution search, for Monday, Christian, or what do you got Monday at 1 o'clock? Because it would be worthwhile to spend a couple minutes and talk about that solution, right? It's not necessarily an end user solution, but there are a handful of advanced people here, and they might want to see that.
It's really, yeah, I'd have to go through it. I've not integrated it myself, but yeah, I could look through it and do a demo on it. It's quite advanced.
Well, we need
super cool.
Yeah, we need to see if we can get that. If Matt Navarre is still putting that on his website, it's his solution. The technique is not necessarily any technique you invent in FileMaker, and you think, I invented that. Yeah, no. There's already been 20 people who come, after the product that's been in market for 30 years. Someone else already invented it. You just happen to be the person right now talking about it. So
what he did that's really nice, if I recall, in that demo, is integrating into the files is quite easy. He created a nice way, because again, the portability of code in FileMaker can be difficult. That's where hopefully the add-ons will help us. But he made that code quite portable that you could integrate into a file without building everything from scratch.
Well, do me a favor and look at that. It's a really great question, and then because I'm not making fun of Media Sandbox. It's just that's kind of FileMaker from 1990 or 89 or 88. It's a flat file. You stick everything in a couple tables. It allows you to do a search. Allows you to do a search and make the search easy and fast, but you sacrifice a whole bunch of other business processes that are really difficult to do that. So you fix the search, but you create other problems. So it's a good conversation to have. We can show you about it. It's a little bit advanced to get it fixed. We're going to pick up Andre tomorrow on the demo. We'll have a couple demos tomorrow. So it'll be an action-packed Friday. Hopefully you folks will make it for that. Once again, a reminder, we are shipping our FileMaker 19 Video Training 1.2. If you have the complete bundle, and you should have got your, and it's currently under subscription, not expired, then you should have today received the updated download, what we call maintenance release. If you don't have the maintenance release, maybe your subscription expired, I highly recommend that you people support the channel. If you want to invite other people to the channel and have them learn FileMaker too, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to go ahead and minimize Christian here briefly. I'm just going to say that the upcoming schedule, you can get the schedule for what we're doing here at fmtraining.tv live. This is where we have all our material here. It's our free live streams, okay? And then this is the upcoming schedule you can see over here. Support the channel. We appreciate it. We really do. And that helps us keep the lights on, the bills paid. And if you, these prices of the FileMaker hasn't changed the pricing of the product. We're trying, at least with FileMaker Pro and their basic licensing, they haven't changed the pricing. We have coupons for you specifically here. You can get this for $249 or $149. Just email us for the coupon at support@RC Consulting. If you think you should have got your download, your maintenance release, and you didn't get it, email us at support@rcconsulting.com. Everything, just email us there. All right, cool, everyone. I appreciate it. Yeah.